If you want results, you must focus on outcomes. Hey, it's Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. I'm sitting in the parking lot of a bank, and I noticed that every car, first off, the bank's not open yet, but every car in the parking lot is actually from the business next door. So the entire bank parking lot is full of non-bank customers parking. Now, if you want results and you want outcomes, you've got to focus on exceptionalism. You got to focus on the outcomes you desire. If a customer were to drive up right now to use this bank, they would have to park behind the building. They'd have to park somewhere else. I don't see any other parking. And I've watched several employees get up out of their car, walk over to this other business, and the bank's not open. The entire parking lot is full. What does this have to do with your success? First off, you can't put up with or tolerate things that are outside of the norm. See, exceptionalism is about above average results. It's about striving for the long-term results that you desire. It's about measuring. It's about understanding. It's about having pride in your work and being an exceptional individual. Now, everybody can be an exceptional individual in their own way. They can be a professional in one trade and someone else can be a professional in another trade. There's no competition when everyone's striving to be their best. And that means that when you see something out of place, especially when it has to do with your business, you need to say something. You need to do something. You need to drive forward the desirable outcome. Just like if you see someone performing a behavior that is inappropriate, maybe it's sexual harassment, maybe it's some kind of discrimination, you step up and you say something. Now, in most cases, people do. They step up and say, hey, look, that's not appropriate here. Take it outside. Or, hey, this is not how we talk. This is not how we represent the company. But more and more I see folks willing to accept what they're being told to do. Whether it's right or wrong, they're willing to accept it without thinking about it, without making much effort. These employees are parking in this parking lot because it's closer to the main building. No one's ever told them probably they'd not park there because there's plenty of parking on the side of the building. There's plenty of parking that's kind of the same distance, but not as easy to get to. There's plenty of parking along the sides of the building and behind the building, but they'd have to walk around the building to get to the front door. And if nobody steps up and says, hey, look, folks, don't park in that other business's parking lot, the more there's going to be the behavior that's undesirable. So you got to start this with yourself. First off, you can't be a dick going around telling other people what to do. It doesn't work out well. You got to make sure you take care of your own first. Make sure you take care of your own behaviors first. If you've got a bad behavior, you've got to step up to yourself and stomp out the behavior. You got to step up to yourself and say, hey, look, this isn't something that's beneficial to me. This isn't something that's productive. This isn't something that's going to take me to the next level. And then you stop doing it. And once you've mastered this in your own behavior, standing up for yourself, looking out for your interests, looking out for the interests of those on your team, educating yourself, investing in education, listening to this podcast is an investment in your education. Not until you do these things for yourself will you be in a position to lead in other areas, to do this for others. Now, I'm not talking, there's a balance here, folks. I'm not talking about you, being a savior to someone, coming in and saving them because they're unable to help themselves. Or I'm not about you being in a position where you are the big boss and just kind of telling everybody how it is and what it is to do. You do need to strategically think about your relationships, your connections. For example, if the bank building is actually leased from the company next door, it technically would be this parking lot that is the right of the employees to use. And a new agreement would have to be made. If the bank has low traffic and they want cars in the parking lot to make it look like they have more customers, then maybe they need designated spaces near the door for customers, and then allow the other spaces to be used by the business. So we also can't make assumptions. We must use accurate thinking to understand the situation, to approach the situation in a logical and relevant way to get the results you're looking for. But it isn't all about rationale. You also want to think about the emotions. if you're going to approach this business about cars parking in the parking lot, you don't describe the 25-year-old guy that's got to walk a little further. You describe the elderly man that couldn't come in that morning because he couldn't park close enough to the store. And actually, I do notice the handicap parking spots are full as well. So ultimately, you can use a story that is emotionally relevant to the other person to help persuade the decision to keep the parking lot open for customers. And this happens in everyday life. You are looking at your earnings. You calculate your earnings from the point of hire, so when you originally got that salary or that compensation, to the current point, and you realize inflation adjusted, you're making less money than you did previously. So you decide to stand up for yourself. You've been listening to the podcast and you're ready to stand up for yourself, and you go in there and you say, look, I'm making less money now than when I started here. And the company knows that when they hire new people, they got to pay them much more than they pay you. But the company also knows that what they're paying you is what's kept you in the door. And you haven't left or decided to go. You've simply put up with it, accepted it, and took that money home. And that's fair compensation because you haven't been saying anything. But they don't give a damn that you're making less money now. It's actually part of the strategy. Human resources in large organizations, they're rewarded on keeping payrolls low. And by keeping payrolls low, they drive to the midpoint of a salary category. They drive to keep salaries, especially on the upper end, the 6 figures and better, to keep them not growing as fast. You know, if the company just raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour across the board, which they do, by the way, by laying off a lot of people, but they're going to look at that as, look, our average increase is X, and the category below $50,000 is Y, and the category above $50,000 is Z. They're going to try to get those numbers as low as possible. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. So when you come in to stand up for yourself, because you're making less now than when you started the job, the typical employee makes half as much in buying power by the 5th year of employment. So that means if you're hired today, 5 years from now, you'd have half the buying power you had from the day you got hired. Probably got twice as much work. But my point being is your human resources, your manager, they don't care that you're making less money based on inflation. You have to have a good selling proposition. You have to position yourself as a value provider, and you may even have to go get a different job. And this is not because there's some scheme against you. It's not because the world is falling apart. It's because simply you have to stand up for what's right. You have to stand up for what is necessary. You have to go for exceptionalism. If you started 5 years ago and you haven't done anything to improve your skills, you haven't done anything to invest in your education, you haven't done anything to improve yourself, then yes, you're the same employee they hired 5 years ago, and you're only worth what they hired you for. Again, though, if you've been investing in yourself, if you've been taking on responsibility, if you've been measuring and progressing through your goals and your development, then you're an entirely different person. Now, that company's got a good deal because they got an entirely different person for the price of an old person, and ultimately, they haven't had to increase with inflation. Even though all their other contracts increased with inflation. They hadn't increased inflation with you. It's a win-win for them. But again, when you approach that manager, they don't care that you're making less money. In fact, they're probably making less money too. And when you reveal to them the basic calculation of inflation-adjusted earnings, they get pissed too. They're like, well, this guy wants more money. I definitely need more money. So how do you approach it? Well, you approach it with the win-win. You understand the relationships involved, and you say, hey, look, I'm interested in moving up in the company. I'm interested in going to the next level. Here are the things that I've done to invest in and understand and have the skills to be qualified for the next position. Then you prepare to apply for the next position, because they aren't likely to promote you in the position you're at because you hadn't quit. You keep showing up every day for whatever they're paying you, but you invest and get ready for that next position. Could be hiring a career coach. It could be looking at your goals and objectives. It could be rewriting your resume. It could be setting up yourself for being hired by a different company. And then, of course, you get out and apply. You get out and take action. You get out and get feedback on your performance. You build out success narratives. You write the story of your next position. And again, there's these steps and exercises that you can take. My point being is that you do what is above and beyond what is expected, and then you take it to the next level. You take it to the next position. You're getting paid less because that's not what you've been focusing on. You've been focused on doing a quality job. Now you've done a quality job. You're going to ratchet it up by getting paid more. And you're going to get paid more in the position you're in, or in a different position, or in some other different configuration of a job. Maybe you're going to become a consultant. But it's exceptionalism. It's taking it to the next level. Now, it doesn't hurt anybody to improve yourself. It doesn't hurt anybody to earn more money. And here's why that's important to understand. If you improve your behavior, your knowledge, characteristics, and skills. Now, if you don't use those, it could hurt people. But if you do use them, it only benefits the people who receive that value of service that you're delivering. If you earn more money, that means you can afford to pay a little bit more in your day-to-day living expenses. You might be paying down debt, which helps the people who have invested in you by loaning you money. You might be able to set aside money for your kids' college and retirement. So again, don't put up with mediocrity. Don't put up with people doing less than what's important. But start first with yourself to lead by example and to grow your position so that you can then later have influence over these other elements. The bank, if that bank manager doesn't talk to this business and clear up their parking lot, they're going to suffer. The bank manager is going to lose money. This business, if it owns the building and the bank loses money and moves out, then this business doesn't have a building to rent or doesn't have a tenant in the building. If the business needs a bigger parking lot and they're currently sharing a parking lot, they can compromise by designating spaces. There will always be a win-win if you're willing to drive forward with it. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this has been about that understanding and driving forward exceptionalism. You want to be exceptional. You want to hold people to standards so that they can be exceptional. You want to be willing to work with individuals so you can get exceptional results. I know I'm probably not using the proper definition of that, but I hope you understand what I'm saying here. I'm about helping you transform business relationships into profits guaranteed. Those relationships and those profits are more than just monetary. They're influence. They're the power to shape the world around you so that you get greater outcomes, better results. Thanks for listening. If you have questions about what I've covered here today or any other podcast, visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. You can get on our announcement list for additional podcasts. And we have other resources and features that are available. Thanks for listening.